Welcome to the Black Queens on Stage podcast, presented by Black Literature and Art Queens Network, where we bring our queens to the stage. Welcome back to the podcast that honors and acknowledges Black women performers and discusses topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am here today with one of my very, very good friends who I have deemed her to be a Rubik's Cube in the performing world, Shardai R. Davis. Hey, Shardai.
Hello. Greetings.
So this is just an inside joke for us, but because of so many of the things that Shardai has told me that she knows how to do and the different performing arts that she has dabbled in, I've deemed her as the Rubik's Cube. That's just how multifaceted she is, and it's just so cool being friends with somebody like you, to have that many talents, you know. I mean, before we even get any further into this, just tell our listeners what art forms you're actually experienced in.
Okay, I am an actor. I am also a singer and musician, and then also a dancer.
And that's it? Just that? I swear that it was like so many other things, but
like what else? Oh, you mean like martial arts, directing, stage managing. I've done all of those as well too. So
Rubik's Cube. That's all you are. Okay, so
I do like that nickname.
Yeah, you're just gonna go by Rubik's Cube from now on. So as a multifaceted performer, describe your style of performing.
My style of performing, I would have to say, do you want it as per performing art or just in general?
However you want to describe it.
I would say as an overall, I am very analytical when it comes to performing sometimes, specifically in theater when I'm acting. As a dancer, I think my style in dancing is kind of all over the place because I've trained in so many different styles. So I've done everything from traditional hula to hip hop to ballet. And then in music, I have training in vocal jazz and classical piano. So my performing style is kind of all over the place.
So what was it that created this drive, this passion that you have to take on so many different art forms?
Well, I mean, as a child, there's a story that my mom used to tell, is that when I was a baby, she would always put headphones on her stomach. And that's when I would start moving right away, always, when she played music. So I guess it started before I was even born. But as a child, having my mom was also a musician, and she was also very big into theater. She did both of those in high school. So she exposed me a lot to the performing arts as a child. And that exposure, I launched right into it right away when I was young. I was going to theater shows at a very young age. And then shortly after, because I grew up in the church, my mom put me in every choir, and she had a lot of friends who were in the business as well. So as a child, I did some opera lessons from one of her friends that did opera all over the world. I grew up in a church that had a very big performing arts community. Our choreographer was someone who trained with ABT, which is American Ballet Theater. So I was just constantly exposed to performing everywhere I was.
What kind of instruments did your mother used to play?
My mom played the bass and the drums. Yeah.
Did she ever get the chance to teach you how to play the drums or the bass?
No, she didn't actually. No. I think between graduating from high school and having me somewhere, she lost the passion for doing those types of things. And I guess her way of sharing that with me was to expose me to others that were either training or performing in those art forms.
So do you have a preferred art form, or do you have a least favorite that keeps you entertained, or a favorite that you just always have to go to?
No, I love all of them. I can't see myself not acting or dancing or playing the piano or anything like that.
So, when you do perform, what does your audience look like? Is there like a difference in energy or reactions between particular audiences, between a Black audience or a white audience, men, women?
I would have to say, in the pointing more specifically to the dance world here in Michigan, I feel that it's heavily female, and usually the female audience members are, they at least appear to be somewhat familiar with going to a dance show and what all that entails. But usually, if you see a male in the audience, not always, but they are usually kind of fascinated about how everything's run and how everything is like displayed. And usually, if we have like a performer audience, like meet and greets at the end, they're usually like, oh, well, I've never been to a dance show before. I didn't know really what to expect, and that they're really kind of impressed and kind of blown away by the art form. So that's always really interesting. For the theater world, I feel it's usually pretty mixed between male and female. Going back to the dance, I don't think in Michigan there's a big person of color audience that comes to see dance shows, which I would obviously like to see that change. But I think across the other two forms, it's pretty open as to what types of races you see at performances.
So you see like a nice mixture of Black and white audiences at like the instrumental performances and in the theater performances.
Yes, especially in the music performances. The theater is the one that's kind of in the middle, depends on what type of show that I'm in. If it tends to be a newer playwright or a playwright that is a person of color, you typically tend to see more people of color show up for those types of performances as compared to maybe older works like a Moliere or a Shakespeare. Yeah.
So what kind of short-term or long-term goals do you have in mind for yourself?
Hmm. With everything that's happening in the world, I've been thinking a lot about this the last few months.
Yeah, we've had like several conversations about this.
As a kid, my goal was always to make it to Broadway, especially since I act, I sing, and dance, so that logically makes sense. But recently, and probably like the last 3 to 5 years, I've really wanted to do more film, and I. When I went to college, I do have film training, so it's something I've never actually really utilized ever in my career. So I would definitely like to do more film. With the whole thing regarding Broadway, that's still a goal of mine, but I kind of want to branch out and do like the out there things. So I know we've been talking, and I know one of the places that's come up is maybe going overseas to perform, going to Australia or like South Korea, someplace like that. So really, I'm just trying to fine tune and still learning and adapting my styles and just trying to move on to the next phase in my career.
So what between the three performing arts that you do, which one do you think that you would end up leaning more towards if you decide on a place where to live? Like, is there a specific destination for each one that would excel you the most in?
Here in Michigan, where we're at right now and where we mostly perform at, I find myself going through seasons of which one I'm more focused on at a time. So last year, beginning of last year, and end of 2018 and most of 2019, I felt like all I was doing was theater. I was acting, 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 acting. There wasn't too much dancing that I was doing, and there wasn't too much music that I was doing. Then towards the end of 2019, I felt like there were dance performance was happening like every other week, and then before everything started to close down, there was lots of dance performances that were supposed to happen for 2020. I feel like of the places I mentioned, I feel like I wouldn't have to per se go through these seasons of having to focus on just music or just dance or anything like that. It's a pretty expansive landscape that there's enough work to be doing all three at the same time, or projects that would entail doing all three at the same time.
So do you have any milestones that you would like to reach, or a milestone that you've already reached in your career?
Hmm, that's a loaded question. I mean, obviously, when I was younger, it was like, yeah, I want that Oscar and the Grammy, and although I mean all those are great, and if I get to achieve all those, I will obviously be very happy with that. But I just want to, a milestone for me right now is just to be comfortable in the work that I'm doing and to produce it and get it out there so that my message can be heard, that I can share a little bit of me with the world and communicate with others. I think that's the biggest milestone for me right now.
That's definitely a good one. I'm honestly right there with you with the Oscar and the Grammy. Give me the EGOT. Just give me the EGOT right now.
Yeah, yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, we definitely want the EGOT. We want the EGOT for sure. And
And
we
then
got to get the other one. Yeah, the Peabody in there too. So
right, so we're gonna end up having to be writers at some point so that we can get a Pulitzer. So
yes, just add them all in there. Put them all in the basket. We'll take it with us.
right, put them all in there. Now, the art world in general is dominated by white people, particularly white people who consciously or unconsciously don't make room for artists of color.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what it's like as a Black woman that's as multifaceted as you are, what that's like in the art world.
It's a constant reminder that there's still a lot of work to be done. That's the sentence that came to mind. It's a constant reminder that there's still work to be done and that we have to keep doing this. We don't get to give up. There are a lot of very talented people that are coming after us and that will come after us, and we're responsible for making that atmosphere a lot better for them.
So, and what in particular is it like being a Black artist in acting? What is it like being a Black artist in dancing? And, like what in particular, like what stereotypes have you faced?
In acting, so we were talking about this the other day, in college, it never occurred to me that my race could be an indicator for getting a role. I mean, outside of, it saying and being noted that, you're playing Harriet Tubman, so that should be a Black person, a Black woman, stuff like that. But it never occurred to me that some people would have a problem with me doing Shakespeare, where race isn't necessarily descriptive in the text. So that was something that popped off for me in college with some of the casting that was done. My teachers were very open about, casting who was right for the part or who was going to learn something from doing this part. And there was some backlash for them doing that because I had access to a lot of roles that typically would not be cast to a Black person, let alone a Black female. So the very first show I did in college was The Female Odd Couple. I got cast as, I think her name is Renee in the show. And she was kind of like the very kind of uptight, like the friend that wants everything done in a certain way. And some people didn't like that.
The neurotic.
Yes, yes. And some people didn't like that I was cast in that part, and especially in a play that doesn't necessarily specifically say like this person should be of Black descent, this one should be of white descent. That was already like a thing, and I was very confused by it. I think one of the more backlashy moments that happened was I was cast in a lead role for Time of Your Life, which, if anyone's familiar, Patti LuPone has played that role. So it's typically played, I don't think I've ever seen it done, played by a Black female. So I got that role, and I remember our theater department kind of being turned on its side because here's this girl, playing this part that Patti LuPone plays. And, I look nothing like Patti LuPone. So there was a lot of backlash over that. And that's when I realized that not everyone is going to be as inclusive when it comes to casting. And that was already my first experience with that. Moving into like the professional world, it's interesting when you show up for certain auditions and, let's say it's a Shakespeare audition and you walk in and they're like, oh, well, no, this audition is the next day. And you're like, no, I'm here to audition for the Shakespeare play. This assumption that because I'm Black, that I may not know Shakespeare or want to audition for Shakespeare. And that is also very prevalent in in the dance world. You walk into a big, usually in dance auditions, there are multiple genres being auditioned for that day. So you might have musical theater going on in one room, you may have ballet in another room, you may have hip hop in one room, you may have urban dance in another room. And when you walk in and you sign in and they're, the hip hop dance audition is down the hall. And you're like, no, I'm here to audition for ballet. So these assumptions that are still prevalent. and it's a microaggression to automatically assume that because I'm Black, I'm there to audition for hip hop or urban dance. I think sometimes we envision the racism as these very big, exploited things, but these microaggressions are just as poisonous as these big, exploited scenes that we see that are happening.
Yeah, and it really does get hard because
Mm-hmm.
and I can't even imagine what it's like for you, especially with you being so multifaceted as you are, where you have to endure with this 3 times the amount of times that I do, because I'm just mostly concentrated in just theater. But it's already hard enough where you constantly come across these daily reminders of how crappy people really can be, and especially when they see how talented you are, then it really comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, explain a moment for me when you had the opportunity to work with a diverse group of people.
I feel like I've been fortunate enough that most of the projects I've done have been pretty diverse. So I'm incredibly thankful for that. But more specifically, like recently in the last few years, I just became a part of a company called CRLT Players. And it's a very, very, very diverse group of people, different races, different stages of schooling, people that have worked all over the country at Ivy League universities. I've learned so much from being a part of that company, and one of the reasons is because it's so diverse on so many different levels.
What kind of work does CTRL Players do? Like, tell us what CTRL means and what's the kind of work that they do.
So the acronym is Center for Research in Learning and Teaching. So they mostly do applied theater. So we do a lot of work with, and it's based out of University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And we do a lot of work, not always focused in, but mostly focused in academia. So we do things like sexual harassment, first generation college student, gender equality or inequalities that might be present, racial inequalities that might be present in academia. Yeah, so a lot of hard hitting topics.
Has it been difficult to really get into those plays with CTRL? Because you were talking about some hard hitting shows. Like, what makes them hard hitting?
They're hard hitting because of the subject matter, but they're also hard hitting because of the way we present the shows. So we do a lot of, the word just escaped me. We do a lot of facilitation. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So we do these shows for college professors and graduate students that are now about to be teachers. So you have, especially since, I'm 33, but I look like I'm 19. So when you're in a room full performing for an audience, these tenured professors, and it can be, it's two different worlds, and the subject matters are very intense because we are talking about sexual harassment, or how first generation college students are kind of set up for failure entering the academic world. So it makes it hard to have these conversations and then to be an actor present for the facilitation and hearing the feedback from the audience and seeing how the audience views things or how they are reacting to what we've just displayed for them can be quite hard at times. So yeah, that's what makes it, the subject matters in itself are very hard, but being in this real world happening right in front of you, hearing what someone's saying about what you just did as an actor can be trying at times.
That does sound like it's really hard. Have you ever come across a play that was taxing for you personally?
Hmm.
Like something that you weren't prepared for, or something that left you a little shook, more shook than you realized?
The one sketch we do with the first generation college students, that one is always shocking to me. And usually not so much in a guttural way, but it's always interesting to hear like what some professors say, and then and it makes all the work that we're doing that much more rewarding and worth it in the end. So I remember one time in particular, it was one of our first showcases for it. So they usually have like a preview show, and then like we have our first show that's kind of like filling out if we need to change anything in the facilitation. And the first generation show there's quite a few of us, and we all hold different perspectives in the show. And it was when all of us were up there and we were acting it, and one of the audience members, who was a professor, decided to correct one of the actors on something he had said in the middle of the show. And what she corrected him on was like, that's why we're doing this show. For people like you. And some other times, so there was at the end a talkback session, and the actors, we stay present for those. And there was a professor who, he meant, you could tell that his heart was in the right place, but chosen words that he picked to describe first generation college students were problematic for all of the actors, those that were Black, and those that were non-Black people of color, and those that are white. We all had a problem with it. Because the way he was talking, it was presented that he assumed that all first generation college students were Black students, and that all of those Black students were from underprivileged backgrounds.
Wow. So
And yeah. And like I said, and for all of us, so I'm one of the newer players to the company, and so a lot of the other actors in the company have been there for years, and so we are all pretty good at reading the audience by now, and we could tell his heart was in the right place, but not realizing that he's saying those words and how they're put together and how it's coming out. It's like, that's part of the problem, these, once again, these kind of microaggressions, he's like, and once our leaders that are in charge of the company are very good at, they'll come by after these kind of talk back sections that are programmed into the sketches, and they'll ask us like, did anything pop off to you that seemed off, or that was like red flag to you? And like we all were like, yeah, that assuming that all first generation college students are Black or underprivileged right there, and so they find ways and they construct ways really quickly to kind of address those problems right then and there. Because like for me, for example, technically I'm a first generation college student by the definition of that. My father finished high school. He had no desire to go to college, so I don't have any experience from my father in the college realm. And my mom, she had 2 associate degrees. So one of the definitions, there's many definitions of what first generation college students are, but the one that most people go by is that one or a parent or guardian finished a bachelor's degree. So I don't have that. So technically I'm a first generation college student. I'm certainly not from an underprivileged family. My parents were working class adults, but my family is by no means poor, but I just don't have the experience in the college realm that some other children might have if both their parents have bachelor's degrees or higher. And so addressing those types of microaggressions in these kind of sessions is always really fascinating to see where so many different people's head spaces are.
God, that's fascinating.
It is. It's incredibly fascinating. Like
Just
it's like I said, during rehearsals, it's hard to like talk about sexual harassment and all these things. But when we do the work and then we see these and we're sitting there and we're absorbing it, not only as actors, but as real life human beings, it's incredibly fascinating to see all these different perspectives from people of all races. And, like I said, that was a white college professor, but we had a black college professor that, we're like, nope, red flag. What she's saying there is kind of, a microaggression, so it's incredibly fascinating.
And that reminds me of the Black Actor Conference that I had on June 19th. It was fascinating enough hearing from other Black actors the different issues that they've come across. But what was even more fascinating was how receptive our fellow white actors were to the issues that we've had, and how some of them were compassionate and empathizing with us. And then just to add on top of that, they clearly just did not know some of the issues that were going on. Some of them just did not know how detrimental that these issues were, that they didn't know that these issues even existed.
Right.
One of the issues during the conference that I actually brought up that nobody else on the panel brought up was color-coded clothing in theater. And and me and
Oh
you,
dear.
me and
Here we
you,
go. Here we go.
me and you, we've had this conversation before about a particular theater doing this, and then not just color coded clothing, but stereotypical clothing as well. There was a theater this past season that dressed their white actor up in stereotypical garb that was related to this character of color, and thankfully they didn't color face them, but it was still just bad enough that they dressed this person up in what's supposed to be some type of stereotypical ceremonial garb. But it just does not occur to them at all that what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing is perpetuating a narrative that is constantly showing racism.
Right. Right.
It's just
But that's why we're in the arts. That's why we're in the arts. To me,
Mhm.
like the arts are a way that we communicate not only with each other, but it's an opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes. And
Exactly.
that's one of the things that people ask me, why did you want to become an actor? Why did you want to become a dancer? Why did you want to become a musician? Because I want to walk in someone else's shoes. We get to do that all the time as actors. We're playing people that usually are not real people, but sometimes we are playing historical figures.
Mhm.
And as a dancer, a lot of the times I'm dancing to someone else's music, and I might not be able to relate to everything they're saying. Like I was watching something on YouTube earlier from a dance program that I looked at, and they were saying one of the choreographers was saying that they were dancing to a female's music, and he's like, I can't understand and relate to everything she's saying in that song, but I can garner her feelings from her tone of voice or what she might be saying that I can relate to. But I get to not only experience my feelings through her music, but I also get to experience her feelings at the same time. And that's, to me, what's so beautiful about doing art, is that we not only get to explore ourselves, but we get to explore other people. And in doing that, we get to see so many different perspectives.
And I agree with that like 1,000 times infinity%, because it baffles me so much when I hear people say that art is not political. It is very much political. Art has always and will forever be political statements. It will always be that. When theater first was created, it was to rally against the government in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for example, when Mike Pence went to see Hamilton, and then the entire cast of Hamilton, they didn't talk him down, they didn't call him out his name or anything, but they acknowledged him, saying that we are here doing this show, sir, and we want to say thank you for coming to our show. But in reality, that was kind of like shade, like, we know your ass is here. We know that you're here. You're about to be exploited. But there was such a huge backlash from it.
Mm-hmm.
Just so many people, particularly the Republicans, that were saying that you're supposed to be doing a play. You're not supposed to be creating a political statement. First of all, let's make one thing very, very clear. They're doing a show about one of the founding fathers of the country.
Yeah, so there
About
has to be
politics.
some historical. Yeah, it has to be about politics.
It's about politics. So how can you say that it shouldn't be political? But second of all, they did nothing wrong. They did not call him out of his name. They did not ridicule him. They didn't belittle him. All they did was acknowledge him. And he could not
Hmm.
take it.
Yeah, because some people can't handle when they expect the worst reaction out of you because it justifies them doing what they're doing. And of course, he expected to be called out and to be ridiculed, and we're like, no, we're doing our thing. You know, you probably know where we stand, but we're doing our thing, and you know, we're glad you're here. Maybe you can learn something. I don't know, like sweet, cool. You know, either way, you're putting money in my pocket, so you know. But it's funny that you said about politics. A few weeks ago, I went to a seminar about racism in the dance world, and it was put on by a very esteemed tap dancer. And there was a quote that she put on one of the slides, and I believe it's the quoter is a businessman. He's a Polish businessman, but the quote is, "Art, freedom, and creativity will change society faster than politics."
Wow, man, that's heavy hitting.
And I wrote that down because I was like, that's a powerful quote by a businessman, a Polish businessman.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm like, that is fire right there. I needed to write that down. So I wrote that down in my journal. But yeah, it's, you know, there's such a freedom that comes with creating and from doing art. And that will, you know, forever be what moves society to a better place faster than politics will. The reason why we know half of the stuff in the world is someone wrote a book about it, someone made a painting about it, someone made a song about it, you know, I mean, you know, that's the debate because so many people think art is irrelevant or not important. And it's like most of the stuff you know is because someone drew a painting about it. You know, Van Gogh did a painting about that, you know, about a hard time in the world. So art is so important. You know, you may not be the most talented person to do all those things, but it's completely important. Just as an accountant is or a politician is, it matters for sure.
Yeah, the thing about it that what some people don't realize that are not artists is that art moves the world. It
Mm-hmm.
moves the world. The world cannot function without some type of art form at all.
Yeah, you're right.
It would barely be able to function with just one art form. It wouldn't be able
Mm-hmm.
to function with just one, and that's why it's so important for there to be so many different forms of art, so that way artists can find their niche and really concentrate their all into it. And then, quite honestly, that's what sparked this podcast. You know, I only heard of, like, you know, several different outlets: poetry, dance, singing. I barely knew much about burlesque. I didn't get into drag until my adult years. And then just this past Juneteenth weekend, I came across a go-go dancer.
Oh,
Yeah. So
awesome.
I know, right? So, you know, it's so many different facets, because facets is the key word here today. There's just so many different facets of art that makes us as artists special, because we can just explore and become multifaceted, right, Shardai?
Rubik's Cube, Rubik's
Rubik's
Cube.
Cube.
I'm gonna start merch now. I'm gonna have my merch, my Rubik's Cube merch.
Yep, we're gonna get you some shirts, and we're gonna so that you have a side hustle and say that I am an artist. I am a Rubik's Cube.
Yep, and 30% of the proceeds go to Ashley. Ashley for coming up with the nickname.
That sounds perfect. So, why don't you tell me a moment where you had to deal with a demanding or a difficult person? What made them difficult, and how did you interact with them positively?
Hmm.
You got stories.
Yeah, that I which one? The
No
Okay,
names.
no names. Yeah, obviously. There was a show that I did. I was the stage manager for the show, so I was not performing. But it was very demanding because one, I was kind of newer to this theater, and so I was still, finding my footing and getting to know everyone. But the show that we were doing was predominantly a mostly female cast, and it was difficult in that trying to get to know everyone because everyone else had known each other for years. But it became more problematic in that the show that we were doing had a lot of historical references, and more in particular to Black culture. And so it became that I became the all knowing overseer of Black culture.
The go-to
And
Negro.
yeah, and I'm like, I am not the beholder of all knowledge of Black culture. There's many things about Black culture I am unaware of or don't have experience in. But yeah, so there were some things in the script that were regarding Black culture in the South. And it was like, well, how do one of the actors felt very, very passionate, I would say overly passionate, about, well, I don't believe we should say this. We should change this. And, first off, it's a published play, so we can't just be changing things like that. But two, I mean, it's part of the play. It's written there. The playwright wrote that in with intentions for something. Whether you understand that or not, whether you get what that intention is beyond what you think we should, be taking this out of the show. But then it became like, this whole, everyone was talking about it. All the actors were talking about it. And, I was doing some stage manager work in my little corner, but still kind of part of the conversation. But it was like, Shardai, what do you think about that? How do you feel about it? And I was like, I don't feel any way about it, to be honest with you, And then, the actor who was passionate about this subject matter was like, well, how can you not be passionate about it? It involves you, someone that looks like you. And I said, well, I mean, one, I'm not like a witch doctor. So I'm a Black woman, but I'm not a witch doctor. So, so, and two, I was like, if you want to be like historically accurate, I said, it's the way it's written is not to defame Black women in any way. I think it's more so to showcase how that not necessarily Black culture, but that type of religious activity was viewed at that time, and how it was viewed at the time that the play was set in. And then it was just like, oh, well, everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense, So it was just like, well, like these little things that came popping up that were retaining to either Black culture or things in the South, all of a sudden became like I knew about it, or that I was supposed to feel a certain way about it. And when that expectation was not met, that I didn't feel charged or outraged by it. It was just like off-putting to the cast and the rest of the crew. So it was demanding in that way that I felt emotionally like, guys, let's pull together. We're trying to do this show. And it became so much of a problem that I did end up having a conversation with the director. And she's not a person of color, but she was like, you know what? It never even occurred to me when I asked you how you felt about it, that's how it would have been portrayed, So she apologized about it. And, I was like, dude, you didn't mean any ill will, but, when you do that, you automatically put pressure on me as a Black person and the only Black person in the cast, that's emotionally draining to have to do every night when we're rehearsing 5 days a week. So I'm good with confrontation and like in the most peacefulest of ways. And so I brought it to her, and she agreed, and like I said, she apologized, and she tried to kind of address those types of things as they came with the rest of the rehearsal process. Like, listen, we can't push everything back on Shardai when it comes to these different subject matters sprinkled throughout the show. Like, we as actors, we gotta research it. We can always ask for her opinion, but like we have to be better about how we are trying to communicate these things with each other. So yeah, that's how I handle it. I just brought it up in conversation.
And that's an important point to touch on when your directors said we need to research it. One thing that I have found, especially during this COVID-19 and especially during the deaths of George Floyd and Tony McDade, that when everything stirred up in the theater world, there were so many of my fellow white actors that reached out to me and was asking me questions, and it's like, okay, well, I don't mind helping you. However, there is a little thing called Google that you
Yes, yep.
can get yourself acquainted with, and there are exponential amount of articles regarding topics like this, so you can start from there.
Right, right.
And I have
And
no problem. I have no problem helping or lending a helping hand in certain situations. I have no problem with that. I'm a very opinionated person, and over the years, I've learned to keep my opinions to myself. However, if something bothers me enough, I'm going to say or do something about it. Thus, me creating this podcast.
right,
But I am not your go-to Negro for everything Black. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Um,
right. Oh man.
and I mean that's the thing, that while and I can only speak for myself, I do appreciate you wanting to come to me and asking me for my opinion or for my help. I don't mind that. But then when it's little stuff, like if you're bombarding me saying to me, what organizations can we donate to? Well, first of all, you can donate to BLAQN. You can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we sometimes, and we all get this way, that we feel like we have to do the absolute extremist activity to make an impact. And
Hmm.
it's like, no, start in your own backyard. What could you do? Donate to BLAQN. You don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to go all the way up and find and do like Black Lives Matter or these bigger organizations. Which, if that's what you want to do, great. But like, support a local, the Detroit Rep, or BLAQN or anything else.
Hmm.
Like start with something small that you have easy access to, and then branch out if you can. And even if it's not a monetary donation, volunteer, pass out some flyers and spread the word
Hmm.
about this theater, Shakespeare in Detroit. Go pass out flyers, let people know that there's this really cool Shakespeare theater company in the heart of Detroit. Like, do those things. Just you mentioning other actors. Oh, Ashley's a great actress, blah blah blah. Like, that's doing your service.
Exactly. Exactly. Why don't you tell me what kind of moral support you get for your multifaceted career?
Well, my biggest supporters, my parents, obviously. My parents have always a bazillion, a million, infinity% supported my endeavors. Because I said at a very young age, I said, I do not want to sit at a desk all day. I said, I need to be doing something active. And I either wanted to be a professional athlete or I wanted to be a performer. So they have beyond invested in me, monetarily and emotionally. Other support from other friends. I don't have any friends from elementary school or junior high I really talk to anymore. But a lot of my college friends I keep in contact with are super supportive of my endeavors, and understand that, Shardai's not coming to my birthday party because she's in a show or she's doing something. And then my college friends, a lot of my college friends I'm still in contact with, and whether they're still doing theater or music or not, they always reach out like, hey, like, if you got something going on, let me know. I'll be there, or even if I can't be there, I'll spread the word about it. So I'm incredibly fortunate and very blessed to have amazing parents and family and friends.
Ahem. Ahem. Ahem.
Oh, you too. Yeah, Ashley shows up to things every once in a while. She checks in every blue moon. No, Ashley's always like, "What do you have going on? Like, what 10 projects are you working on now?"
Right. So, what kind of advice do you have for aspiring Rubik's Cube artists such as yourself?
Advice. Okay. One, put in the work. You got to put in the work. I have this quote that I talk with my friend Yolanda about, and I was just ranting about it, and I was like, people want to be triple threats, but they don't want to put in the work. They want to be, triple threats, but they don't want to do the work. They just want to do the acting training or something like that. But you have to put in the work. It's doing all of the things that I'm fortunate enough to do. It is a lot of work. I mean, like earlier today, I did like 2 or 3 hours worth of dance practice of random stuff. Then I, went over some monologues, and then after this, I'll probably do some more dancing and play my piano for 2 hours. It's time consuming, but if you want to do it, you have to do it. Another thing is don't let anyone tell you that you have to pick one. I reached that point at a very young age because in high school, I gave up everything. I didn't act. I didn't do it. I didn't do any acting. I didn't do any music. I didn't do any dancing. I gave up all sports. I did nothing for the first time in my life. I went to school and I came home. And I was because I was battling, I'm in high school now. I'm going to have to pick one of these things to do. And I was like, but I don't want to. And everyone's like, no, you have to pick one. You can't be, a dancer and a singer. You can't be an actor and a dancer, and then I came to this conclusion one day is like, why can't I? Why can't I do all three of those things? There are people on Broadway doing all three all the time. Why is that not, why don't I have access to that? So yeah, I mean, if you're really passionate about it, if you have the talent and you're willing to put in the work, you can do all three. You can be a music producer, a dancer, and an actor. Absolutely, you can do it. And then other advice is just keep at it. You'll go through phases, especially depending on where you're at, that you might have to go through seasons of kind of mostly focusing on acting or kind of mostly focusing on dancing. But even if you are weighed down with one for a season, still keep up with the other stuff on the side.
Now, this is the section that is called the Queen's Request. Okay.
Ooh, fancy. Okay.
So, recommend to me one or two Michigan Black women artists of any genre that we should be keeping an eye out for.
Whew. Ashley Lyle.
Oh my goodness.
Ashley Lyle is amazing. You should definitely check her out. She's very experienced, multifaceted actress, organization owner of BLAQN, if you haven't heard of her. So that's theater. And dance, there are so many amazing Black dancers in our area.
Yeah.
And there's actually been a few studios that have popped up too. So there's the dance scene in Michigan is very active and alive. There is quite a few great dancers that I've seen at a studio I've never been there personally myself, and I don't know these people personally, but I support their hard work. They opened up a studio, I believe, on 7 Mile. It's in Detroit. It's called Exhibit Studios. There's a lot of great dancers there.
Oh, yeah.
There is Big Red Dance Company. She's based out of Detroit. I don't know if they have an actual brick and mortar building, but it's a company, and she has worked all over the country, and she's kind of housed here now, but she has a dance company and they do a lot of wonderful work. And then there's a lot of other dance companies that have been around for a long time in Michigan that are doing some beautiful work. So yeah, keep an eye out on the dance world in general. I feel like of all the three art forms here, I feel like dance is the least talked about in the performing arts world in Michigan, because people go to see music shows from all over the place in Michigan, and people know that theater exists, but there's a lot of really great dance companies in Michigan that are housing some beautiful Black bodies and other people of color.
We're always going to keep talking, but I really did enjoy this talk. I feel like I was able to disassemble this Rubik's cube of a friend of mine, and really find out, the things that make this artist tick. So I appreciate you sitting down with me and taking the time out to talk with me about this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. No, it was really enjoyable, and I had a blast. This was an absolutely blast. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm so glad. I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really did. I'm inspired to go like do something right now.
Good. What I mean, you're probably just inspired to take up some other art form, right? And be
I
a
mean,
Rubik's diamond.
I don't consider myself a visual artist, but I am a big supporter of visual art. I came into that actually in college. Like before, I was like, yeah, painting's cool. Like I knew about artists and stuff like that. But I really fell in love with the world of art in high school. I went to a public school for high school and in Dearborn. And we were one of the very few in the entire state of Michigan. We had a arts humanities program. So instead of just having English, we had English humanities. So we got to do a lot of like different works by different people, like in a lot in the theater world as well. But we also had art humanities once a week and music humanities once a week. So my world of art was completely blown open in high school. So I'm a big supporter of visual art as well. So I love Van Gogh is my favorite artist. So I'm a big supporter there. So do art. Everyone do art whatever way you can. You don't have to make money at it, but if it's a hobby, just do it.
That's good advice. I like that.
But
Thanks again.
I do paint. I do paint occasionally. So, but thank you so much
Of
for
course
having
you
me.
do. Of course you do. Thank you.